Hello guys. Hello. Konnichiwa. What if I told you that you are a genius? When you think of geniuses, who are the first people that come to mind? I'm guessing Einstein and Shakespeare are on your shortlist. Others might include Stephen Hawking, Bill Gates, Marie Curie, or Ruth Bader Ginsburg. These names pop into many people's head because each of them was extraordinary in the kinds of intelligence we tend to equate with genius. But was LeBron James on your list? How about Beyonce or Oprah or you? It wouldn't be surprising if you didn't include the latter names on your list. Most of us tend to equate genius with one particular measurement of intelligence, IQ. People with outsized IQs are geniuses, and people with lesser IQs can be good or even great at something, but they aren't considered geniuses. If this sounds like you're kind of thinking, you're far from alone in defining geniuses far too narrowly. I would even take this to the point of suggesting that most people define geniuses in this way. But there are two problems with that. One is that it prevents you from appreciating the genius a wide variety of people hold. The other is that it might prevent you from identifying the genius in yourself. There are multiple forms of geniuses. Various experts differ on the number, but it's commonly agreed that genius expresses itself in one of four manners. Here's a way of looking at it that has been around for thousands of years. Dynamo genius. Those who express their genius through creativity and ideas. Shakespeare was a dynamic genius because of his brilliance at inventing stories and that told us so much about ourselves. Galileo was a dynamic genius because of the way he could see things that others things that others couldn't see when he looked up at the skies. Dynamic geniuses are those we most commonly think of when we think of geniuses. Blaze genius. Those whose genius become clear through their interaction with others. Oprah Winfrey is a blaze genius because of her extraordinary ability to connect with the hearts, minds, and souls of a wide range of individuals. Malala Yousafzai is a blaze genius, expresses herself through her ability to make her story relatable to people all around the globe. Blaze geniuses tend to be master communicators. Tempo genius. Those whose genius express itself through their ability to see the big picture and stay the course. Nelson Mandela was a tempo genius because he was capable of seeing the wisdom of his vision even in the face of overwhelming odds. Mother Teresa's tempo genius allowed her to imagine better circumstances for those around her even at the darkest times. Tempo geniuses tend to understand the long view in ways that most of those around them cannot. Steel genius. Those who are brilliant at sweating the small stuff and doing something with the details that others missed or couldn't envision. Sergey Brin used his genius at seeing the potential of large amounts of data to co-found Google. If you read the book Moneyball, then you know that Billy Beane and his staff redefined baseball through their genius at crunching data. Still, geniuses love getting all the information they can get and have a vision for doing something with that information that most others miss. There's a very good chance that your own genius is a combination of two or more of these. Very few of us are only data people or are only adept at being emphatic. But what's important for you to understand here is that genius extends far beyond your ability to excel at academics or recite the periodic table on command, and that you have genius inside of you. If you find that last statement surprising, you might want to go back and reread some of the early chapters in this book. Making yourself limitless is all about unleashing your innate genius. Maybe you are the dynamo of Shakespeare or the blaze of Oprah, but there is some combination of genius inside of you that is either wanting to express yourself or waiting to express yourself more. The key is letting it free. It isn't only in your head. Before I give you some tools to help you shift towards a more positive mindset, let's just talk for a minute about how important positive thinking is. There are clear connections between positive thinking and physical health. In a Johns Hopkins study, Dr. Lisa Unick found that positive people from the general population were 13% less likely than their negative. Positive people from the general population were 13% less likely than their negative counterparts to have a heart attack or other coronary event. Meanwhile, the Mayo Clinic notes that the positive thinking that usually comes with optimism is a key part of effective stress management, and effective stress management is associated with many health benefits. They note that these benefits include increased lifespan, lower rates of depression, lower stress, lower levels of lower levels of distress, greater resistance to the common cold, better psychological and physical well-being, better cardiovascular health and reduced risk of health from cardiovascular disease, better coping skills during hardships and times of stress, reframing limiting beliefs. There's a metaphor I've always found useful when helping people to move away from limiting beliefs. I tell them that the difference between limiting beliefs and a limitless mindset is like the difference between a thermometer and a thermostat. A thermometer has only one function: to react to the environment. It reads the temperature and nothing more. This is similar to how people commonly react to limiting beliefs. They read their sense of restriction, react in a constrained way to that, and conduct their lives in a limited way. On the other hand, a thermostat gauges the environment and makes the environment react to it. If a thermostat notices that a room is too cold or too hot, it changes the environment to fit the ideal for which it is set. Similarly, if you encounter external or internal attempts to put constraints on you, you can act like a thermostat to reject those limiting beliefs and create an environment that aligns with your most ambitious goals. So how do you minimize limiting beliefs and develop a superhero mindset? To me, there are three keys. Key 1: name your limiting beliefs. You've seen some examples here of limiting beliefs, but there are many more where those came from, and we'll go over the 7 most prevalent limiting beliefs on learning in a moment. They might have to do with your talents, your character, your relationship, your education, or anything else that leads to internal whispers that you can't be what you want to be. Start paying attention right now to every time you tell yourself that you're incapable, even if you think that this particular thing might not be consequential in your life. For example, maybe you tell yourself that you're terrible at telling jokes. Perhaps this isn't a big deal to you because being a good joke teller isn't a personal aspiration, but you might also be telling yourself that you don't think you're entertaining or good company or an enjoyable companion, and that kind of self-talk can ultimately cause you to double clutch when you're in an important social situation or when you need to speak in front of a group. So listen carefully every time you find yourself using phrases like "I can't," "I'm not," or "I don't." You're sending messages to yourself that are affecting how you think about your life in general, even if what you're beating yourself up over is something specific and seemingly not important to how you define yourself. At the same time, try also to identify the origin of this sort of self-talk. Limiting beliefs often start in childhood. That doesn't automatically mean that your family is their only source. Early social settings can cause limiting beliefs, as can early experiences with education. Some might take hold simply because something didn't go well for you the first times you tried it as a kid. Being aware of how you're holding yourself back with your self-talk and spending some time to get to the source of these beliefs is extremely liberating, because once you're aware, you can begin to realize that these aren't facts about you, but rather opinions, and there's a good chance that those opinions are wrong. Once you identify the voices in your head that are focusing on you and focusing on what you can do, start talking back to them. When you find yourself thinking, "I always screw up this sort of thing," counter with, "Just because I haven't always been good at this in the past doesn't mean that I can't be great at it now." Keep your opinions to yourself. Key 2: get to the facts. One of the fundamental tyrannies of limiting beliefs is that in so many cases they're just plain wrong. Are you really terrible at speaking in public? Are you really bad at leading a group? Are you really the least interesting person in the room wherever you are? What's the evidence to support that? How many times have you actually been in these situations, and what have the results been? Quote: "Life has no limitations except the ones you make." Les Brown. Okay. And what have the results been? One of the most pernicious things about limiting beliefs is that they play so heavily on our emotions. When you come up against limiting beliefs, you're likely to find those beliefs wearing and usually winning against your rational self. But how much of this self-talk has a basis in reality? Think about your experiences speaking in public, and an extraordinarily common fear, by the way. Rather than focusing on how you felt in these instances, consider how things went. Were you booed off the stage? Did people come up to you afterwards to laugh at you and tell you how awful you were? Did your boss sit you down the next day to say that you might want to consider a career where you never had to utter a word? I'm guessing none of these things happened. Instead, it's likely that your audience felt connected to what you were saying. If it was in a professional setting, maybe they were taking notes and you almost certainly taught them something. Does this mean that your next speech should be at TED? Of course not, but it definitely means that you're likely much better at conveying information to a group than that voice in your head is telling you that you are. And then there's this question to ask: how much of my perceived poor performance was because my self-talk just wouldn't leave me alone? This is a real issue for many people. They'll be in the middle of doing something in which they lack confidence, and the inner critic will become so distracting that they cannot focus on what they are doing, and therefore they don't do it very well. This is one of the reasons why it's so important to learn to face down and quiet your limiting beliefs. The better you are at this, the better you'll be at keeping down distractions during your biggest growth challenges. So when you're examining the facts behind your limiting beliefs, be sure to consider two things: whether there is in reality any evidence to prove that you are truly hampered in this area, and whether even that evidence was trained by the noise in your head. Key 3. Create a new belief. Now that you've given your limiting beliefs a name, and now that you've carefully examined the reality of those beliefs, it's time to take the most essential step to generate a new belief that is both truer than the lies you've been accepting and beneficial to the limitless you that you are creating. You're gonna see this process at work in the next chapter, but let's take it for a spin right now. Let's say that one of your limiting beliefs is that you always come up short at the most important moments in your life. Having identified that as a limiting belief, you've taken the step of examining the facts when you realize is that while you have occasionally succumbed to nervousness in pressure-packed moments, very few of these instances have been disastrous for you, and upon examination, you can think of several times when you came through in the clutch. In fact, now that you really think about it, you've succeeded way more often than you've faltered. So now it's time to create a new belief. In this case, your new belief would be that no one triumphs at the most critical juncture 100% of the time, but that you should be proud of yourself for how many times you performed at your best when the pressure was highest. This new belief completely supplants the old belief, is fully supported by the facts, and gives you a much healthier mindset the next time a critical situation comes along. I have one more tool for you to use here. I've spoken to many experts over the years, and the conversation often comes back to the same thing. As long as you believe that your inner critic is the voice of the true you, the wisest you is always going to guide you. Many of us even use phrases like "I know myself" and before announcing your limiting beliefs. But if you can create a separate persona for your inner critic, one that is different from the true you, you'll be considerably more successful at quieting it. This can be enormously helpful, and you can have fun with it. At the same time, give your inner critic a preposterous name and outrageous physical attributes, make it cartoonish and unworthy of even a B-grade movie, mark it for its rigid dedication to negativity, roll your eyes when it pops into your head. The better you become at distinguishing this voice from the real you, the better you'll be at preventing limiting beliefs from getting in your way. The possibilities become limitless. Okay. Now that you know how to conquer your limiting beliefs, you can start to bring a positive mindset to bear on your quest to become limitless. That might sound like an audacious plan, but there's a lot of evidence to support the connection between mindset and accomplishment. One of our podcast guests, James Clear, the New York Times best-selling author of Atomic Habits, who you'll meet again later in this book, wrote about a study performed by Dr. Barbara Fredrickson, a positive psychology researcher at the University of North Carolina. He prefaced their conversation by underscoring what negative emotions do to us. Using the example of encountering a tree in the forest, researchers have long known that negative emotions program your brain to do a specific action. He noted, when the trigger crosses your path, for example, you run, the rest of the world doesn't matter. You are focused entirely on the trigger, the fear it creates, and how you can get away from it. The point that Clear is making is that negative emotion drives us to narrow the range of what we are capable of doing. It's all about getting away from the metaphorical tiger, and nothing else matters. If we let negative emotions such as limiting beliefs control us, we're regularly operating in survival mode and therefore confined to a reduced range of possibilities. What Dr. Fredrickson discovered is that a positive mindset leads to precisely the opposite result. She created an experiment where participants were divided into 5 groups and presented with film clips. The first group saw clips that elicited joy, the second saw clips that elicited contentment, the third saw clips that generated fear, and the fourth clips that generated anger. The fifth group was the control group. After they had seen the clips, the participants were asked to imagine similar situations to what they just saw and how they would react to these situations. then asked to fill out a form that had 20 prompts that began with "I would like to." The people who experienced fear and anger wrote the fewest responses, while those who experienced joy and contentment listed far more than even the control group. In other words, Clear noted, when you are experiencing positive emotions like joy, contentment, and love, you will see more possibilities in your life. What's also essential to note is that the benefits of a positive mindset extend well beyond the experience of a positive emotion. Clear offers this example. A child who runs around outside swinging on branches and playing with friends develops the ability to move athletically, physical skills, the ability to play with others and communicate with a team, social skills, and the ability to explore and examine the world around them, creative skills. In this way, the positive emotions of play and joy prompts the child to build skills that are useful and valuable in everyday life. The happiness that prompted the exploration and creation of new skills has long since ended, but the skills themselves live on. Fredrickson refers to this as the broaden and build theory, because positive emotions broaden your sense of possibilities and open your mind, which in turn allows you to build new skills and resources that can provide value in other areas of your life. The theory, together with the research reviewed here, suggests that positive emotions broaden people's attention and thinking, undo lingering negative emotional arousal, fuel psychological resilience, build consequential personal resources, trigger upward spirals towards greater well-being in the future, and seed human flourishing. The theory also carries an important prescriptive message. People should cultivate positive emotions in their own lives and in the lives of those around them, not just because doing so makes them feel good in the moment, but also because doing so transforms people for the better and sets them on paths towards flourishing and healthy longevity. The new mindset that comes from silencing your inner critic presents you with a world of possibility. When you're surging with positive emotions, you're seeing and seizing on opportunities you might never have noticed before, and with a high sense of motivation. And really, how could you not to be motivated by this and the right methods? You're well on the road to becoming virtually limitless. Before we move on, to learn faster, we must transcend the narrow definition of what we believe is possible for ourselves. In the following pages, you'll learn about the 7 learning lies that are the most common limiting beliefs that holds people back. I've seen students and clients cling to these beliefs throughout my decades of teaching people how to learn. These restrictions are the only real barrier you face. After all, people can learn to read faster if they believe it is impossible. They can learn to memorize things more efficiently if they keep telling themselves they have a bad memory. Everything else falls into place when you snap out of the trance of these so-called limitations. By tackling these lies, you'll be tackling the core blocks that keep you from being limitless. Here are a few things to try before going to the next chapter. Think of a time when you saw someone accomplish something that truly impressed you. Now, think about what personal inspiration you can draw from that. Reimagine your inner critic. Change the attributes of this voice in your head so you begin to give it less credence. Face down one limiting belief right now. What do you regularly tell yourself you can't do? Find the evidence that shows you that this belief isn't true. Okay. Quote. There is one grand lie that we are limited. The only limits we have are the limits we believe. Win or die. Okay, tomorrow the 7 lies will learn. So that's it, guys.